I think there's something there of if you're only with people who, if there's a slight doubt, say to you, oh, are you really sure you want to be doing that? Versus people who, when you share that with, are like, yeah, we had that hiccup or we pivoted or I thought I would be here, but now I'm there. I think like those voices that you hear at the dinner table or at the end of the day actually really matter. I actually advise most founders to do something like that because all of the things that you don't want to hear, I think it's much better to hear all of those things early on so you can change your research, change your go-to-market method, or just find solutions that haven't been done before to have more conviction about what you're doing.
Hi, I'm Cameron. I'm here with the Restive Perspective. I'm a partner at Restive Ventures and really excited to talk about women in the CEO seat, why they made the jump and their personal stories. So today I'm here with Ana Mahoney, who's the founder and CEO of Addition. She is a fabulous entrepreneur, a friend, and has just built an amazing company. So I'm excited to have everyone get to know her better. So Ana, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about Addition?
Thanks, Cameron. And thank you so much for having me. I love the mission of what you're trying to do behind this effort. I would love, love, love to see more women in the CEO seat at all different types of organizations. So thank you for doing this. Thank you for having me. Thank you for being an investor in my company. Really appreciate working with all of you. I'm Ana. My background is in both consumer finance as well as technology. I began my career working for a private equity fund whose sole LP was JP Morgan. We invested in consumer finance companies. So I spent the first part of my career focused on consumer finance. In that role, I also then worked for the director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau when it was getting up and running. Really love the mission of the organization. And then after a handful of years in my career, I went to Uber. I was there for 6 years, first on the ride side and then on the Uber Eats side. After I had been at Uber for a while and the company went public, I wanted to do something new. And I thought about, okay, there's clearly a gap in the market with not enough people getting access to personalized financial expertise. You normally have to either have a lot of money or pay a lot of money in order to get access. And I thought, how can I use what I've just learned to bring product and tech and operations and marketplaces to solve that problem, since there is a huge gap in the market.
Cool. Well, and we'll definitely get more into Addition later, but just on you, I mean, have you always wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, no, I did not always want to be an entrepreneur, and I never necessarily saw myself as one. I always have felt very passionate about certain problems, right? And so for me, I spent a lot of time early in my career learning about these different pieces of consumer finance, and not just in my job, but actually also in my personal life, helping my mom manage her finances. I volunteered for Acción International. I did different types of things that helped me understand and learn more about the space, and frankly, like discover how much I wanted to work on it. And then when I went to Uber, it really opened my eyes as to the ability for different people to come together and build and create new things. I had never worked in an environment that was as innovative and as awesome from like a let's just come together and, we can always find a way to solve a problem. And that really opened my eyes. So entrepreneurship came to me from thinking about what do I want to do next, having expanded my risk appetite to do things early, and not really seeing in the market something else that I was excited to do, so saying like, okay, well, maybe I could do something on my own.
Tell me about the decision to start your company. What made you get there? What planted the seed in the first place?
So for me, starting a company was a bit of a multi-year effort of actually finding the courage to do it. I had never envisioned myself necessarily starting something, but I definitely wanted to go to a company earlier and have a big impact. And it was throughout the course of some interviews with other people and kind of seeing, okay, it's hard for me to find all of the things that I want to find in a job coming together. It's hard for me to find the right role, the right location, the right company, the right mission, the right group of people that are clearly set up. So I would have loved to jump on something else, but I never found the perfect fit. And then as I started to try to find companies to join early on, I found myself more and more wanting to have the job of the person that was on the other side of the interviewing table. And I think once I had, and I didn't have that many interviews, but once I had a series of them, and especially when I had a series of them with people who had substantially less experience than I did, and I realized just had more courage, that's when I was like, okay, maybe I can do something. And I didn't make the decision overnight and say, like, I'm definitely going to do this. But I started talking about it. I started thinking about it, and I gave myself the permission to say, okay, what would be the problem space? How would I get this done? What would I need to know? And so I started the exploration that way.
I love the both. I wanted to go out and create my dream job because I couldn't find it elsewhere. Like, that shows just a vision for where you want to go. And the kind of demystification of it.
Yeah. And actually, sometimes people ask me, right? Because I now meet a lot of people that you can tell want to do it, but actually the courage is what is stopping them. Especially because these are like super competent people. They do amazing things in their other jobs. Like, they could go out and raise the money or do what they needed to do if they wanted to. And I love to tell them actually that the hardest part of my entire entrepreneurial journey up until this day has been making the decision to leave my job to actually give myself the space to consider to do it. Because once you've done that, right, once you have stepped away from all of the protections and the cushiness and the fear of failure, then I think you're actually making the exact same set of thinking or decisions that you would make in any job, right? Like, okay, what do I need to figure out? What are the 3 problems? Like, you basically take one big mission and you just split it into like mini chunks of what needs to get done. And that's kind of the same as any other job that people have, right?
So let's talk about that. How'd you get that courage, that conviction to actually make the leap?
I think one, I started to have more exposure to people who had done it, right? Both other founders as well as venture capitalists. And I got some interesting advice from different people that just helped me put the different types of risk into perspective. One, it was actually very helpful to meet very, very early stage people that were trying to build their success, but seeing that they were at kind of part 0 and hadn't proven anything previously, but they were able to raise the money. They were able to start hiring people, because I think what I learned there was, okay, this person doesn't necessarily have some sort of skill set that like I or other people that I know don't have, and yet they have made it this far. I also think, for me, and I don't know that everybody needs to do it this way, but I took it very much in chunks. Like, all right, let me think about if I could have an idea that I'd be interested in committing to. Like, let me see if some research that I do in market proves that out. But I was actually okay if any of those answers were no along the way, to turn around and say, okay, I gave it a shot for 3 months. I gave it a shot for 6 months. Let me just go back and find a job, right? Like, I gave myself the space to take the steps that I needed to be able to go and do it. I think it would have been much harder for me if I had said, no matter what, I'm going to go and be an entrepreneur. Because for me, that actually wasn't true. I was going to go and start a company if I found something that I believed in, that I believed had a path to success. Very much knowing that, like, not all companies end up successful, but like at least doing what I needed to do there. And then I think it's surrounding yourself with people who have that entrepreneurial mindset, whether they're investors or other founders, to just help you believe that you can do it, right? I think there's something there of, if you're only with people who, if there's a slight doubt, say to you, oh, are you really sure you want to be doing that? Versus people who, when you share that with, are like, yeah, we had that hiccup, or we pivoted, or I thought I would be here, but now I'm there. I think like those voices that you hear at the dinner table or at the end of the day actually really matter in helping you understand, okay, what I'm going through is normal, not what I am going through is like failing already from the get-go, given how much uncertainty there is.
Surround yourself with optimists. Tell me about that process, because I know you had a very regimented process where you were kind of continually going back and refining things. So talk through what you did, what worked, what didn't.
I think there are people who say, I know I want to do something. Let me put together a deck. Let me raise money. And then from there, they do a lot of exploration with an openness to pivot. And I actually think that's like a very successful strategy in a lot of ways, particularly from like a financial perspective for the founder, because they can start paying themselves a salary early on. For me, I took a different perspective, which was I wanted to have a lot of certainty around what I was going to do before I actually went to market to raise. So I gave myself time. I had a general problem space that I was very interested in. But I started doing calls with people I knew that were involved in the space to try to figure out like, okay, is there a there? Could I do something like this? Early on, I had introductions to some investors just to get their perspective on certain ideas. Like this was not to raise money. And I had a couple of ideas that I was working on, one in particular that I was super excited about. And I had these ideas like aggressively squashed on the phone. And those were not like pleasant calls, but they were super, super helpful because I learned what in market had already been tried, what had not been tried, what had worked, what had not worked, what are all of the sticking points that are viewed in certain industries, what are investors not willing to invest in. And so I actually advise most founders to do something like that because all of the things that you don't want to hear, I think it's much better to hear all of those things early on so you can change your research, change your go-to-market method, or just find solutions that haven't been done before to have more conviction about what you're doing. And then once I landed on an idea, I said, okay, this is what I think I'm going to do. Here are the 2 questions that I want to be able to prove in market in order to be able to take this seriously, both for myself, but also because I knew those were the hard questions that were going to come in any fundraising conversations. So I hired 2 people part-time, that not insignificant a cost actually, to help me work on those for about 4 months. And once I saw in market that I could get the answers that I wanted, and that there were signals that this could work, I said, okay, now let's try and go and do this. The other thing I did that's tactical, but that was actually very helpful for me was I noticed at the beginning it was kind of scary to invest a bit of money on like surveys or research or, interns. And so I actually just, I have like a tracker of my finances, and I decided one day to just add a line, which was the investment of the business that I was willing to put in, and actually view it as like an investment the same way that I viewed an investment that I had in a random stock. And so when I looked at what is the cost of that relative to investments that I'm making in other places, I felt much better thinking, okay, if I'm willing to bet on this other company that I actually don't even know like that much about, that I have no control over the outcome, for a much smaller number, I'm also like willing to invest this number in myself.
And it sounds like you cycled through a lot of ideas. I mean, how'd you come up with those? What was that like?
So my process was, I started with an idea. I started speaking with people in market on that idea just to learn more. I also spoke with some investors to understand with these ideas, like what's been tried in the past, what has worked, what has not worked. Super helpful because super painful when people squash your ideas, but super helpful to have them squashed very early on when you can understand like what's not going to work and what do you need to work through. Then I landed on 2 ideas. I had 2 interns. One were focused on each idea, like running market research for me to help me understand if there was actually interest there. Then I joined a 6-week accelerator. That was a business ideation accelerator through First Round Capital, which I'm super grateful for, where they basically said, okay, who are the people that you would need to speak with in order to be able to prove out these ideas? And so I had probably about 15 interviews for each idea. One was very quickly, like within a week. I was like, this is heartbreaking for me because I love this idea, but it's just not going to work for me at this moment in time. And the other actually had more legs than I thought it did. And the hardest question that I was trying to work through, which was the go-to-market distribution, helped me get to an answer on what could potentially work there. And so at the end of those 6 weeks, I was like, okay, I think there's something here.
So let's fast forward to the fundraising part. Obviously that for a lot of female founders that does present its own challenges. But tell us about the process. Tell us about what worked for you.
It's a great question. Okay, so I actually would reiterate something that I said earlier, which is I think people should do enough research and have some early calls that are not at all fundraising focused to get feedback on what are the hard questions you're going to be able to get. I did find that there were some amazing, amazing women that just supported me from day one. And that was extremely helpful. And so I love this. I think that there's a real community that's starting to be formed between women investors and women female founders that is early, but like hopefully in the next few years will prove out to be an incredible thesis that then makes it easier for other people to get funding, like Cameron, you included. But I actually had one of the first calls that I had was with Kat Utek from Core, and she we had a conversation. Then I was invited to their partner meeting. And then that night she called me and was like, we're in, how can I help? And so having that first person say, we're in, like, let me introduce you to other people. Let me figure out how we can help you. I found to be a real game changer and just like super optimistic. And it was really nice to have somebody supporting from day one saying like, you're about to be on a roller coaster, but like, we're here. And I'm here and I want to help you and I want to support you. So if you can find that person, like I will forever be grateful to Kat for that, because otherwise I think it can be a really tough thing to go through. I think also just going into the process, knowing like even the most successful fundraisers have no's, right? And so you just got to buck up. But the entrepreneurial journey is like, you just got to buck up throughout the whole thing. Like you don't get what you want every day. You get a lot of no's, right? Like if you think you're just going to get a yes from everyone and it's going to be X or Y or Z, like you just have to reframe your mentality because that's not what the process is. And so I think being ready for that is just very important.
Yeah, I think you're so right, especially that first yes can de-risk everything else going forward. And so, I love that idea of both building those relationships early on and, kind of flipping this thing on your head. Like it is tough to be a female founder raising. But on the flip side, there is a growing community. So how can you really take advantage of that to find some advocates and have them be that first yes or that first intro that leads to a yes? So let's fast forward from there. You got money. Tell us about the early years of Addition and kind of getting to where you are today.
So the early days are just hard, right? Like there's no way around it. I think they're fun. They're exciting. But when you build from 0 to 1, you build from 0 to 1. Like it is unknown, unproven. Most of the work is like unglamorous. And so I think you just need to be ready for that and ready to learn from the market, to work really hard, to see what's working, what's not, right? Be very open-minded to that, not too committed on something when you might get a signal that it's not going to work. The other thing is just surrounding yourself and starting to build a team. And this is a cliche, but I think it's super important. Like with people who are smart, flexible, and hardworking, right? Who can adapt to those changes that you learn in market, who are excited to be along for the ups, and that can like be okay through some of the unknowns or unclears or even downs that are inevitable and likely to happen. And what else? Like I do think there's something, and this is outside of the team, but it's like, who are the people in your life that you see every day, and like, how are they going to react to this? And how do you want to manage for that? So I think like I have a husband who works with a lot of entrepreneurs. And so when I have a hard day, he says to me like, well, Anna, you wouldn't have signed up for something that was easy. Like now you're having a hard day, right? Or this is part of the entrepreneurial journey. Like this is normal. This is like everybody goes through things like this. Or he'll just remind me that I just had a bad day, which I think is very different from friends that I've had that have started to start companies where maybe what they hear at the end of the day is, yeah, that's like not a good signal. Are you sure you want to be doing this? Right.
And just to add to that, I mean, I'm a big believer in having your community of people. I mean, maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's your best friend. Maybe it's just a community of founders you build up, but it is such a hard job. You always need to vent at some level, and you want, to your point, someone that really gets it. And one thing I'm a big believer in is using your superpowers to kind of really dig in, advance your company. Tell us what your 1 or 2 or 3 are.
Sure. I love to hire like super capable people that are hardworking and let them run. In terms of my superpower, I actually think it's like not trying to do everything on my own. And it's more around like, how do I find those people and how do I tap into them?
I think another thing, Anna, that you're great at, and again, it's probably come forward through this conversation, is your thoroughness. Like, you are uniquely thorough. And I think it obviously has benefited you in a number of ways. And we've heard, your process to just get to raise and, continuous kind of feedback and thinking through the company. But I think kind of at a meta level, there's so many things that can go wrong in a startup, and thinking through all of the permutations and all of the different solutions, and then being really systematic at going out and getting feedback, I think it cuts down on that error rate a lot. And again, there's always going to be errors, but I think you are kind of more prepared than a lot of people. And I think it's, kind of been helpful to your success. So that's kind of one outsider's observation, but, so Anna, what's in store for the future of Edition?
So our mission is to help bring personalized financial expertise to more people. And I am very proud that we're doing that and able to do that. And so one thing that I'll say is like, what helps you get through the challenges of the everyday, right? Because you're just building from zero, and there are always so many things that you can do or do better or need to build. For us, like, since our beta, like, the testimonials that we get have been very clear that our product and offering are working, and that has been awesome. And so what is hopefully in store for us is bringing that to millions of people, right? We spend our day figuring out, how do we get access to more companies? How do we engage more people? What do they want to see? How do we build for that? What do we do? But we are very true to our mission, and we're very focused on that.
Well, what advice do you have to any women that may be contemplating jumping into the CEO seat?
We need more CEOs, as we need more women CEOs. So if you are contemplating it and you are wondering, can I do this? You should just not think that, can I do this, right? And say, how would I make this work? If this were what I if this is what I were to do, how can I make it work? Because I think too many people stop themselves from a competence perspective, and I think that that's the wrong reason to not move forward. I think the impact of having more female CEOs goes well beyond the impact on that individual, right? I think more female CEOs means more funding going to women companies. I think it means more female executives on teams. I think it likely also means startup wealth that is created going more to women than just to men. And I think it also likely means more companies being built that have many types of end users being thought about in many fields, right? Like, and it's super important in a handful of fields, but like, I just think the downstream implications of what having more female CEOs mean would just be much, much better for our society.
I love that. Well said. I have heard other female founders say Anna is our beacon for what it means to be a mom and an entrepreneur. And I don't want to get into all of the, how do you do it, work life, but like, just what are some of the tactical things that you do to make it work?
Yeah. Well, and you also know, Cameron, being a mom yourself, I'd say you have to have a great partner, right? So somebody who splits the work with you. I do believe in this philosophy of the most important business decision you will ever make is who you decide to have as a life partner. I think having help, right? Whether that's like a great daycare or childcare at home or whatever that means. And then understanding what you can do and what you can't do and kind of setting your boundaries around it, I also think is very important. So I'm not trying to do work in the hours that I can't do work.
You know, Anna, you and I have both talked about how we're a big fan of 6 a.m. flights because one, they're there, but two, I mean, it does mean that you have a little bit more family time. So there's just little things where it kind of flips how you think about time in a different way, but that just make you better able to manage a lot of things. So, yeah.
I love that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Anna, for joining us today. It was so great to hear your story, and I know it's going to bring a lot of inspiration to others out there. So thank you, and congrats on everything you built so far.
Thank you. Thank you for being so inspirational, Cameron.
Awesome. All right.
All right. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Thanks for watching the show today. For more information, go to restive.com/blog. Check out the show notes, and if you'd like to see future episodes, subscribe on YouTube. Thanks.